Meta, just the other day, announced the Meta Quest Pro. Now, I hate to break it to you, but it's not for you. It's not for me. And in fact, it's probably not meant for most people. First of all, there are so many aspects of the Meta Quest Pro which are awesome, but there's quite a large price point of entry that no one really wants to pay. I think it's $1,500, maybe $1,599, can't remember off the top of my head, which is an awful lot of money to pay for a headset that is more focused on work and augmented reality rather than virtual reality, gaming, and so on. There are also quite a few other things within the MetaQuest Pro that if you, say, decided to jump on board and say, well, okay, this is the bleeding edge of VR at the moment, and I want the best self-contained VR device there is. And if you had money to burn and you decided to opt for it, there are still some things about the MetaQuest Pro which kind of don't make it lean towards being a really very good VR headset. The first one, and this is a bit of a doozy, they go on about, people are sort of questioning about the controllers, which are great, which are awesome. You know, they're independent, they don't rely on the headset for tracking, they have their own internal cameras to do their own tracking, and they have a hefty price. They're $300 if you wanted to buy them and use them independently on your own MetaQuest 2. Now, that's great. They have a battery life of 8 hours. What doesn't have a long battery life is the actual MetaQuest Pro. They're saying between 1 and 2 hours. And there's no way of extending that battery. You can't get a different headset with a bit bigger battery pack. There's nothing to take off as far as I'm aware. So unless they're going to launch a bigger battery that you can maybe take like you can with the Quest 2. When they say an hour to 2 hours, they probably just really mean an hour. Now, an hour of gameplay is really pretty poor. And in fact, as a business user, you would certainly want something that would last a lot longer than an hour. And that creates sort of two problems in a way. Those that are buying it for being like the bleeding edge in VR and want the latest, we're going to be very disappointed in the fact that it's just not going to last very long. You're just going to get into a game and then you're going to have to recharge it. And I don't know how long it takes to recharge. And then you have to put it on a table and have all this fancy charging station all sort of patched up, whereas one of the things I kind of like about the MetaQuest is I can use any charging cable that I've got lying around, and there's plenty of them, just plug it in there and dump it down the side of the sofa whilst it's charging and out the way. Whereas this thing is sort of loud and proud and in your face. It's got its charging station and God knows what, which is fine, I guess, which is fine for business in a way, because you kind of want it available to see, and you're not going to lose it, or it's not going to get damaged in any way. But it's how long does it take to charge? Does it take a few hours to charge? Like the MetaQuest Pro, the MetaQuest 2 takes a while to charge. Is it quick charging? Is it anything like that? We've not really heard anything in that regard. And then, of course, if you are a business user, an hour's use is next to useless. You want something that's going to be useful for a few hours. They're going on about that you're going to have this sort of office that's in VR and AR and UR and God knows what else. But if you've only got, say, an hour or 2 hours at most of use, that's not a lot of work being done in that environment. And then you have to go back to the environment in which you were in before, which is what everyone else is in, which is either a laptop or a PC or, whatever. So I can't see, that whole signaling of it being the future of working away, in a way, working out at the moment. This is kind of a stepping stone to show their intention. I get it. But as far as being a useful product right now for a lot of businesses that just want to use a virtual environment, whether it's augmented reality or VR or whatever, to do work, then it's kind of lacking in that regard. The sort of real VR wanting the best, it's open at the sides, and then if you want it so you're fully immersed, you have these like pads that you clip on, so it blocks out any light at the sides. And it doesn't actually block out all the light. It doesn't stop light coming in from the front, underneath. This is not aimed at VR at all. It's augmented reality. It's meant for business. It's got a high price tag, and it's still lower in terms of price tag compared to a lot of other business headsets. And it's more of a signaling of intent rather than being anything that's truly, really workable right now. I can't see a lot of businesses using this effectively every day, because you can only really use it for a couple of hours at most, maybe an hour and a half before it needs charging, and maybe it takes 2 hours, 3 hours to charge. Who knows? So it kind of makes it redundant, because you're then going to have to take whatever it is you're working on in that environment and then move it into your normal environment. And you just, from experience, I know what it's like. You just kind of think, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to work in the one I normally work in, rather than dicking around with the device just for the sake of the device. Is it making me more productive? Is it doing something extra that I couldn't do before? Those are the questions that a lot of businesses will ask. And in terms of design and things like that, perhaps, yes, maybe. So, yeah, is it for you? No. Is it for me? No. Would I buy it? No. But it does show that there is promise in terms of what is likely to come for the MetaQuest 3. I did read a report yesterday that Zuckerberg did say that the MetaQuest 3 would be like $300 or $400. I don't know how true that is. I didn't check to see whether it was a real comment made by him or not. But yeah, that would be very interesting if that's true. But we're likely to see a lot of the technology move over in a cheaper form towards the MetaQuest 3, which I think we'll probably see this time next year. By which time we would have had the PlayStation 2 VR, which I'm more excited about as a standalone VR, as a tethered VR rather. But as a standalone, probably the MetaQuest 3 is the one that I'll certainly get again. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Do you think that, all that Meta are doing is sort of signaling intent rather expensively, and sort of using this as a public display of what their technologies can do, which a lot of companies do. They do that kind of thing. Do you really think it has any real practical use? Are you actually considering buying one yourself, and why? I'd love to know. Yeah, so let's have a chat below, shall we? And if you've not subscribed, subscribe, click the bell and all that other nonsense, and give me a thumbs up. That's always pleasant. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.